This is FYI, a public affairs program of Strong Tower Christian Media on 93.7 The Light and Hope 100.7.
And I'm JT. Welcome to FYI. I get the pleasure every week to talk with interesting people about fascinating projects, and today, no exception. I am talking to the voice of Confectionately Yours. And if you've been around Strong Tower Radio very long, you're familiar with that voice. Welcome, Sue Murphy. How are you today, Sue?
Oh, I'm great, JT. Thank you for having me in for the program.
It's such an honor. Thank you for being here. Now, let's talk about the beginning. Let's go back. Confectionately Yours is a program where you give life point advice from the kitchen a lot of times. Not always from the kitchen.
It basically, Confectionately Yours is about hospitality, seeing God in the everyday of life. I mean, He's in the minute details of our lives. And if we look for Him, we'll find Him. And when we find Him in our everyday, we can trust Him for the big stuff.
Yep. Now, Confectionately Yours, how long have you been doing it, and how did it get started?
Well, the initial Confectionately Yours ran for about 10 years, and then COVID hit, and I had some health issues, so I stopped. So we stopped for about 3 years, and we have a new radio station under the guise of Strong Tower Christian Media, and they are all Southern gospel, and they felt like my program would be a great fit, so we have put new music under it. We have rewritten several of the segments, and I've written several new ones, even in that 3 years when I was kind of laid up. And we're starting anew. So it's fresh and new again.
Nice. So you didn't stop writing. You're always writing.
No. I never quit looking for God in the everyday. And,
there we go.
So I love my iPad. I take copious notes, and anytime that I'm out and about during the day and something pops in my head, I make a note of it. But how did Confectionately Yours come about? Well, the short version is that I believe it was an answer to a nonspecific prayer that I prayed consistently over several months. There's a bit of background I need to add, though. I was widowed very suddenly 14 years ago. My husband was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the late 90s, and we just left a piece of our heart here in the Dayton area when he retired from the military. And after his death, I returned to the Dayton area as I had a great church and a support system here. And my kids were in college in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Bought a house in Dayton area shortly after I was widowed. And the very first night in my new home, I found a great Christian radio station. And the messages and the music helped me grieve well, if I can call it that. Along with my Bible, I was reading good books. And one was The Prayer of Jabez. And it is a great book if one is in a season of life where they really don't know what to do with themselves. And I was certainly in that season trying to figure that out as a new widow. And if I can, I'll just quote First Chronicles. And Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that thou wouldst bless me indeed, and enlarge my coast, and that thine hand would be with me, and that thou wouldst keep me from evil, that it may not grieve me." And God granted him what he requested. Well, this prayer leaves the blessing up to God. I didn't pray for anything specifically, and He knows what would be best for us. And enlarging my coast certainly didn't mean accumulating more stuff or more money, although that's always nice. But it meant increasing my area of influence for God's glory. And honestly, I was trying to get rid of 32 years of accumulating stuff at that time because I moved into a smaller house. But I learned very early on in my widowhood that I could not do all the catering and banquet planning that I enjoyed in the past. I'm actually a registered nurse by profession, and that took up a good chunk of my time. But it was a year into my widowhood that I was invited into the radio station, our sister station, WEEC, to share a testimony about the producer of the morning show wanted to engage with the listeners, and she wanted to know about people's testimony and their passion. And I grew so much during that first year as I clung to the Lord with all that was in me. So I come in with a self-published cookbook, 2 kinds of cookies, and a testimony of God's grace. And I really connected with the young woman who interviewed me, and it was she who had the idea for a radio segment on hospitality, sharing recipes.
I've found that anytime you enter a radio station with cookies, that's kind of a Good way to end her.
I have found that food is the great common denominator for all men and women. It really is. We all eat, and most of us admit that we love to eat.
Yeah.
So, it was her idea to start a radio segment, and we did it. We started 2 days a week, and, then as the radio station grew and we actually, Strong Tower Christian Media bought a building in Xenia, and the 2 radio stations, EEC and FCJ, came together under one roof. So during that time, that we were transitioning, I was, invited in to be a morning co-host, which I absolutely loved. I got paid to talk, which is one of my favorite things, talking and getting paid. But, it just reminded me of the prayer of Jabez, that when you invite the Lord to direct your path, he will surely take you up on it. And, I've always loved to write. I love recipes. I love to talk. I love visiting with folks and hearing their stories. And I really enjoy most aspects of homemaking. And I have learned, though, that you don't own the house, it owns you. So, Confectionately Yours is about all of those things in 2-minute segments.
Now, when you put together your stories, now I know I've heard you say you are really listening to God in your everyday situations. But when you put that together, who do you think is listening? Like, do you have a particular, do you think about someone who is listening and who that person is and what they're doing?
Well, sometimes I do. Actually, I hear back from the most unusual folks. I did a radio segment several years back about silly putty,
Uh-huh.
and I had given it to a child for Christmas, and they managed to stick it into my sofa. So I had to get out silly putty, and my thought was, no good deed goes unpunished. But that's not true. That's a lie from Satan. So I was at church not long after that, and a Dayton police officer, came up to me and said, "I heard your radio segment on silly putty." He said, "It really helped me because I got some of that on my uniform and I knew how to get it out." So it certainly wasn't a Dayton police officer I was thinking of about silly putty. I was thinking about me and getting that silly putty off my sofa. So who knows?
Yeah.
You know, we just pray that it gets to the person that they need to hear. And most of my segments really are kind of upbeat and happy, but I have done several segments on grief and tears. And I did hear from one listener, back in the tenure portion, where she was coming out of hospice, uh, saying goodbye to her friend. And the segment that day that ran was "Tears Are a Language God Understands." And she wrote the station because she was so touched that that 2-minute segment spoke to her directly. And she wrote, "God knew, God knew."
Sure. Yeah.
So we just kind of hope that these segments hit where they're supposed to go and leave it up to God for it to
There you go.
shoot the arrow, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Now, you've got some new ways for folks to hear them. You've got a website now. Folks can go there and listen, see your menus, all those fun things. Tell us a little bit about the website.
Yeah, I had kind of a homemade blog before, and I navigated it myself, and it looked homemade, trust me, because I am not computer literate. But a friend of mine has put together a website and built it from the ground up, and it is confectionatelyyours.net. And you can find all the recipes that are in my cookbook. All the recipes that I share on the radio are there. Sometimes I do a blog once a week, but I don't give you a whole lot of detail. I'm not going to bog you down with all the cutesy little things that a lot of the other blogs do. About their. I just go right to the point. I'm going to give you the information and give you the recipe, and actually the recordings are there too.
Right.
If you want to hear the recording again.
Yep.
And I've just learned that you can cut and paste those and send them on to a friend if you want.
There you go. So if you hear one on the air, and of course, these days you're on the air 98.3 in Portsmouth, Huntington, Ashland area. Folks, hear those and you want to hear it again. Or if you miss hearing Sue and Confectionately Yours on Hope or The Light, you can find them at confectionatelyyours.net and share them with a friend, find the recipes and all the good stuff. Pretty cool. What's ahead for Confectionately Yours? Anything wild and crazy coming down the pike?
Well, I'm going to learn how to navigate the website myself, so that's wild and crazy for me. I believe just continuing to go through my old material and rewrite it and make it fresher for this season of life. Um, And the picture that is there on the website, I have to laugh. It's my last official photo, and it's the only one that I had on my phone to share with my friend Carolyn, who built the website. So it's a little outdated. It's a glamour shot from when I turned 40. I told my husband at the time that it was my last official photo. I don't care if I croak when I'm 104. That's the one that's going in the newspaper. So that's the one that's on the website right now. So I think one of the, and I don't like having my picture made. I'm not photogenic. I really do have a good face for radio, as they say. So I guess that's the thing, is just keeping it fresh and updated, and engaging with listeners. I mean, I really want to engage with the listeners. My last blog really didn't allow for that. If people really wanted to get in contact with me, they would write the station, and the station would forward it to me. But you can email me directly. We can have a conversation. I would dearly love to hear other people's stories about their recipes, because there's a story behind every recipe. Yeah. There really is, especially family recipes. The person that made it, their personality. I've heard stories where there were secret recipes and Mama would never share it, and she would say, "Over my dead body, will I share this?" And then the family, once she passes, they put her recipe on her headstone. So it was literally over her dead body that she shared that recipe. And I love that. I love it.
Okay. Hey, we're here at the end of the year, kicking off a brand spanking new 2024. Do you have any tips or advice for young folks who are in the kitchen, just starting their hospitality journey? Any advice or tricks, tips to share today?
Well, we've got Food Network, and we've got YouTube, and we've got all these wonderful tools at our disposal these days. I didn't have that. I had one cookbook when I got married, and it was a lot of trial and error. But honestly, if I could encourage anyone, I would say go to your family members, your grandmas, your aunts, your elderly, and get those recipes that, once they pass, they're gone. And there is actually a recipe in my cookbook called Childhood Chocolate Cake. And it was it was inspired by Miss Doris, who lived right across the street from us, right across the road in the country. And she used pantry staples. There was nothing fancy about it, but she made a cake that I literally dream about still today. And every time that segment about Miss Doris's chocolate cake runs, I have to go make a chocolate cake, because I even inspire myself sometimes.
Yeah. Nice. So nice. I know I've heard you talk about knives in the water. Now that's advice, if I've ever heard it.
Oh, yes. That particular segment, I was about 30-ish years old, and my friend Mary Ann was in her 50s, and we were cleaning up in the kitchen, and she was washing dishes, and I was putting things away. And I slipped a knife in her dishwater, and she yanked it out so fast and looked at me, and she said, "Don't you ever put a knife in the water when I'm washing dishes." And you know what? I was 30-something years old, and I didn't care for her tone of voice. And it sounded very much like the tone she used with her teenage daughter. And she didn't care for it either. But to Mary Ann's credit, it was not intentional that she would sound so sassy and so forth. I took it that way. It was my attitude. And you know what? Because of the way she delivered the information, which is good information, by the way, I didn't listen to it. About 2 weeks later, I slid my hands into some soapy water, and I cut my finger on a knife.
Uh-oh.
And it came back to me that a knife in the water was dangerous. Yeah. So that was a segment that came from that. And you know what? I've since seen Mary Ann. This was in Louisiana, and I have since seen her in Kentucky and reminded her of that. And we laughed over it. But that's just sensible information. You don't put knife in soapy water when you're going to be sliding your hands in there.
Well, and that's what Confectionately Yours with Sue Murphy is all about. Tidbits you can't live without.
Well, you've mentioned knife in the water many, many times to me, and it's like, apparently that really resonates with JT, not to put a knife in the water. He liked that one.
Part of my job at the house is doing the dishes.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little sensitive to knife.
Well, now you know.
I like that one. Yeah.
Now you know. Okay.
Sue Murphy, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate your ministry and all you do with Confectionately Yours. Again, you can find it online now at
confectionatelyyours.net.
Thank you for listening. Have a great 2024.
This is FYI, a public affairs program of Strong Tower Christian Media on 93.7 The Light and Hope 100.7.